it's now my privilege to introduce our first session. If you're not yet familiar with Partnership for Public Services work, building bridges from campus to the federal workforce, you've just received your first insider tip for today. We worked with them last year and we are so excited to have them back again this year. The partnership is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that strives for a more effective government for the American people. So this panel session, we are excited to announce, will be moderated by Brittany Moore, who manages the partnership's internship and fellowship programs. Brittany works with federal agencies to support the recruitment, retention, and placement activities of these programs and helps to develop leadership and mentorship programs for participants. She's also joined by Leia Washington, who supports the partnership's federal workforce efforts to engage universities and recruit the next generation of public servants, and serves as a program coordinator for a cohort of federal leaders in the Excellence in Government Fellows program. Thank you both so much for leading this session.
Wonderful. Thank you for that introduction, Nora. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. As Nora mentioned, my name is Leia Washington, and I'll get us started with the session. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Please excuse me for any technology issues. We've been working remote for over a year, so hopefully I have it down by now. But again, thank you all for joining today. As Nora mentioned, I'm Leia Washington. I'm also joined by my colleague, Brittany Moore. We both are on the Federal Workforce Programs team at the Partnership for Public Service. I'll be kicking us off with a presentation today, and then Brittany, as well as some of our panelists who we'll introduce shortly, will be giving a panel presentation shortly. So a little bit more about the Partnership for Public Service, where Brittany and I both work. The Partnership for Public Service is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that works to revitalize the federal government in a lot of different ways. Primarily, the federal workforce team, where Brittany and I sit, works to inspire a new generation of talent to serve in the federal government and really tries to transform the way that government works. In order to achieve this goal, the partnership works to hire mission-critical talent, engage current federal employees, build networks of support with both agencies and universities across the country. We try to modernize governmental management systems and really seek to develop strong leaders. Today, we have a lot in store for you that we're really excited to talk to you about. So as I mentioned, I will be giving the first half of this presentation. So my presentation will really focus on all things federal jobs and really just give you a brief overview of federal hiring. We'll talk about the perks and benefits of joining the federal government. We'll talk about where the jobs are located and how to get into those jobs using USA Jobs primarily, and then also developing your federal resume. We're also joined by a panel of federal employees who have really great advice for you all, and we're really glad that they could join us, and we'll introduce them at the end. They'll be able to answer specific questions that you have as a result of my presentation, and they'll also be able to give you more tips and advice for understanding how hiring managers think, advice on navigating the hiring process, which admittedly can be a little bit tricky sometimes, and then also just overall charting your career path in the federal government. So we're really excited to be joined by our panel today. So before we get into the panel, we're going to start with just the perks and benefits of working for the federal government. We believe that there's a lot of reasons that students should want to pursue a career in federal service, so we're going to talk through some of those today. The first that you see on your screen is that you can make an impact in a big way. By working in the federal government, you have the opportunity to impact hundreds of millions of lives. Every person in the American population and some people overseas come in contact with the American government. There is no shortage of jobs in the federal government, which we'll talk about in a few slides. But you could work in really any sector and still have an impact on the American government. There's also great benefits that come with working in the federal government. So there's great work-life balance. Most federal agencies have flexible work schedules where employees can kind of set their own hours if they are not if they're not used to working the 9 to 5, they can kind of set their own hours. There's also flexible telework policies. We can see that in 2020, a lot of agencies had to take advantage of these telework policies, but many had them in place even beforehand for people who couldn't come into the physical office all the time. It might be a little bit early to start thinking through some of these other things, but there's also great student loan repayment assistance and health and retirement benefits packages. Again, might not be the top of mind for students, but they're really competitive benefit packages that we think are really enticing reason to work for the federal government. The next thing the next bullet point is high levels of responsibility. So A statistic that the Partnership for Public Service likes to cite often is that only about 6% of the federal workforce is under the age of 30. That means the federal workforce is getting older in age. And so as federal employees start to retire and start to move up into positions, there's a lot of opportunities for young people to come in and have those high levels of responsibility right away. Also, as we mentioned earlier on this slide, because the work that you do impacts so many lives, everything you do and every project you work on will be by nature a high level of responsibility and highly visible project. We also like to mention there's a lot of training and development opportunities in the federal workforce. We as the Partnership for Public Service offer some of those to federal employees, but there's really tons and tons of organizations like ours whose sole job is to increase the leadership capacity of the federal workforce. So there's always training and development opportunities available for you. There's also things like mentors or rotational programs. So you could work in multiple different agencies to get a feel for different ones. You can have a mentor to kind of guide you through federal employment. There's no shortage of opportunities kind of in this space. This is especially important when you're kind of starting off in your career and kind of getting your footing, so that way someone can kind of develop you throughout your first couple of years in the workforce. And that will be really valuable whether you stay in the federal government or decide to go elsewhere. And then finally, we'll talk about this in a few slides, but there's really opportunities in all fields. So no matter your major or your educational background, there's an opportunity in the federal government for you. So we just want to show these two examples as highlighting meaningful work in the federal government. So the Service to America medals, or shortened the Sammies, highlight excellence in the federal workforce. And we really do this to inspire other talented and dedicated individuals to go into public service. Every year, the Sammies highlights many individuals across the federal government who are doing really great work, and we try to showcase their accomplishments. One, to give them the recognition they deserve, but also, as we mentioned, to inspire others to want to do the same. So these are just two examples. The first, on the left-hand side, you can see a Sammies Finalist team made up of Corvelli A. McDaniel and Lorraine Cole. Their 2020 Management Excellence Sammies Finalist team, in an effort to help the 149 minority-owned banks earn new revenue, this team at the Department of Treasury, under this leadership, launched a Treasury Bank Mentor Protege program in 2018. This initiative established a relationship between the largest U.S. commercial banks serving as mentors and then small minority-owned banks serving as proteges. The objective of this program was to keep small banks owned by minority groups such as African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian or Pacific Islander Americans, and Native Americans viable so that they can help address the needs of their own communities. On the right-hand side, you see Dr. Beth Ripley, who is the National Director for VA 3D Printing Network at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And she is a 2020 Science and Environment Sammies finalist. She developed an interconnected hospital-based 3D printing network that was designed to share resources and knowledge throughout the Veterans Health Administration. We really like to highlight this example because this network of VA hospitals has begun to use 3D printing to design and produce PPE to aid in the coronavirus response. We think that's a really timely and relevant example of innovation happening in the federal government. This slide is just to show you a brief overview of federal government at a glance and give you an overview of the jobs that exist in the executive branch. So the federal government is actually the largest employer in the country, so there's no shortage of opportunities within it. There's more than 370 agencies and subcomponents across the country and over 2.1 million federal employees staffing them. There's opportunities across different levels of government and really all across the country. You can see on this slide, only 15% of the federal workforce is located in the DC area, while 85% of the federal workforce is elsewhere in the United States. We just like to include this statistic because a lot of people think that they must come to Washington, DC, they must live in the DMV area in order to work for the federal government. You can really live in any state or any country. There's also federal opportunities in over 140 countries worldwide. So you can really work anywhere and still work for the federal government. Seeing this slide, you might be wondering kind of, okay, so what are the jobs that are available in the federal government? And as we mentioned earlier, there's jobs really everywhere. So no matter your educational background, no matter your major, there's job opportunities in the federal government. Each agency has many different functions, so they need specialists to carry out their missions, but they also need support functions for their operations. So we like to use the Department of Veterans Affairs as a really clear example. Their mission is to provide healthcare for veterans. And so in order to do that, they need doctors and nurses and hospital staff to directly provide that healthcare. But they also need employees who carry out support functions. So like any other business, they need those in budgeting, in finance, human capital, technology, management, legislative affairs, policy, and more. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Every agency has those mission functions and those support functions. So whether you're a technologist or policy focused, there's an opportunity in government for you. We'll get in a little bit later in this presentation, we'll talk about how to search your major on USA Jobs. But you can, each job on USA Jobs has what's called a job series code that are organized by the type of occupation, which is how we pulled the numbers that you're seeing on your screen. So these are just examples of different job series. So things like legal fields, education, economics, etc. And you can see the total number of employees in the federal government that have those jobs. So this is just to highlight that even if you are not a political science or public affairs major, there's still many opportunities in the government for you. So now that we've talked about why you should want to work for the federal government and you can feasibly see your major or your educational background fitting into the federal government, we're going to talk about some tangible ways that you can actually get into government. So the best way, and the thing that I think is most common that people hear, is that you just apply through USA Jobs. But internships and fellowships can be kind of another way that you can get started in government, see if it's a right fit for you before pursuing a full career in government. So we'll talk through some internship and fellowship programs now that can kind of get you started on your federal career. So the first and the kind of premier government internship programs is the Pathways program. So Pathways began in 2010 when former President Barack Obama signed the Hiring Reform Initiative. The Pathways is an umbrella term used to describe three different programs: the internship program, the recent graduate program, and the Presidential Management Fellows or PMF program. So we'll briefly talk through each of these now. So the Pathways internship program is what you think of when you think of a traditional internship program or traditional internship experience. So this is an opportunity for students, that could be high school students, college students, graduate students, etc., to work in federal agencies while they're still in school. These are different than what you might see on agency websites that are student volunteer positions. Pathways positions are paid, student volunteer positions are unpaid. Another benefit of Pathways internship programs is that you're eligible for conversion, which is a government term that just means once you successfully complete the internship and all its requirements, the agency that you're working for could hire you on full time if they believe that you're a good fit for the agency. This is why the Pathways programs are such a good opportunity for those who know they want to pursue a federal career, but want an internship experience first or are still in school, because being eligible for conversion will make it easier for the agency to hire you on after your internship is complete. The recent graduate program is a little bit similar to the Pathways internship program, except for this is for people who have just graduated. So instead of being still in school, the recent grad program is an opportunity to serve in government for a limited period of time after you graduate. In addition to kind of being a normal internship program, or in addition to the work experience that you're getting, because you're a recent graduate and starting your career, this program also offers training and development opportunities. So you can see on the screen that this program offers 40 hours of training and development, and you also fill out what's called an IDP, or an individual development plan, that will just help you set goals for what you want to achieve during the program. In order to be eligible for this program, you must apply within 2 years of receiving your degree. The final one that we'll talk about is the Presidential Management Fellows, or PMF program. So this is one of government's most prestigious fellowship programs that's really designed to create future government leaders. It's a leadership development program similar to the recent grads program. So instead of 40 hours of training and development, this program offers 80 hours of training and development, and still offers that individual development plan as well. Applications for this program are only open for 2 weeks in the fall, and it is really highly competitive. So applications will usually open around the end of September and close the beginning of October. The exact dates vary year to year, but it's only 2 weeks in the fall. They receive a really high volume of applications, so that deadline is very, very strict. Once applications close, OPM, or the Office of Personnel Management, who runs the Presidential Management Fellows program, will select finalists. If you are selected as a PMF finalist, then a whole host of federal job opportunities open up only to other PMF finalists. So you'll still have to apply for the federal jobs, but it will be opportunities that are only open to PMF finalists, which is really great. And then you have a full year to find a job in the federal government. There's typically job fairs held, and the people who run the PMF program at OPM will kind of help facilitate that process of finding a job. Once you get a position, finalists who obtain a position as a PMF will serve in a 2-year appointment. Again, similar to the internship program and the recent graduate program, people who successfully complete the PMF program are also eligible for conversion. We also like to highlight just some other internship and fellowship programs. So we could have 15 slides on this. There's many, many internship and fellowship programs throughout government. So we encourage you to do some research on your own. If you know there's an agency you're really interested in working for, just Googling that agency, going on their career page and seeing if they have any internship opportunities that are available. But we're just going to really quickly highlight some of those. So the first one that you see is the Department of Justice Attorney General's Honors Program. This is a premier program for entry-level recent graduates who are interested in becoming federal attorneys. So this is open to graduating law students or recent graduates of law school. And then the next program that you see is the Thomas Pickering Graduate Fellowship. So this program provides graduate fellowships to students who are committed to joining the Foreign Service. So it's administered by Howard University, but open to students from all universities. So if you've ever wanted to work for the Department of State or have ever considered joining the Foreign Service, this might be a really great opportunity for you. It's open to those who are seeking admission to a 2-year full-time master's degree program in a relevant field, so like foreign affairs, international affairs, public administration, etc. And you apply the fall of your undergraduate senior year or the fall before you plan to attend graduate school. So it's a 2-year program that you'll participate in throughout your graduate school experience. So you apply right before you attend graduate school. The next program is the White House Fellowship Program. So this is a program that was founded in 1964 by Lyndon B. Johnson, and is again one of the most prestigious programs for leadership and public service. This program offers firsthand experience working at high levels of government. So selected individuals typically spend a year working as a full-time paid fellow to senior White House staff, cabinet secretaries, or other top-ranking government officials. Fellows of this program also participate in an education program consisting of roundtable discussions with leaders from the private and public sectors and trips to study U.S. policy in action both domestically and internationally. This fellowship is awarded on a strictly nonpartisan basis, so it doesn't matter which party is in office at the time, you can participate. It's completely nonpartisan. In order to be eligible for this program, applicants must have completed their undergraduate education by the time they begin the application process. There's no formal age restrictions, but this fellowship was created to give recent graduates the opportunity to experience government early in their careers. So there's no upper age limit, but it is kind of an early career program. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of other government and internship fellowships that exist. So we highly recommend doing your own research. So agency websites are a great place to start. You can see examples, careers.state.gov lists out all of the different internships and full-time employment opportunities specifically at the Department of State. And then other agencies have things that are similar. So you can see Intelligence Careers also has a career page. This is a great place to start if you're a little bit overwhelmed by USA jobs and don't really know what you're looking for. You can see the types of jobs that are available in any given agency on their own career pages. You can also explore local and virtual federal hiring events. A lot of agencies will participate in hiring fairs, either through universities or just on their own. We mentioned government internship programs, but you can also participate in internship programs through your university or through third-party entities. So examples include the Partnership for Public Service. We run 3 internship and fellowship programs, the Washington Center, the Hispanic Association for Colleges and Universities, or HACU, and Coding It Forward. There's a lot of other third-party entities out there that run government fellowship programs. These are also helpful because they tend to be a little bit more specialized oftentimes. So for example, the Partnership for Public Service, we have what's called the Cybersecurity Talent Initiative. So if you know that you're a technologist or specifically interested in cybersecurity, third-party programs might have more tailored internship programs that you can apply to. Government service programs such as Peace Corps and AmeriCorps are also really great opportunities. When you return from those programs, you can actually have special hiring eligibility in the federal government. It will just be easier for federal agencies to hire you on. So that's also a really great place to start. And then finally, gogovernment.org is a place that houses all the resources that we'll talk about today and many others for getting into the federal government. All of that being said, the best place to search for federal jobs is usajobs.gov. So I'm going to give a really quick overview of USA Jobs. And if you have more specific questions, we definitely encourage you to save those for our panel at the end. So of all the tools getting into the federal government, usajobs.gov is the most valuable. In theory, most agencies should post all of their open positions on USA Jobs, and you can use this one website to apply for federal opportunities all across the federal government. There's a lot of information available at your fingertips on this website. So the first piece of advice that we always give is we recommend creating a profile on USA Jobs. This will allow you to save your searches. You can put in your email address and get email notifications if a job that meets your search criteria is posted. You can save your federal resume directly on USA Jobs. You can save positions that you know you'll want to apply to, etc. So it's a really great tool. We recommend creating a USA Jobs profile. USA Jobs also has really neat search functions. So you can search USA Jobs in many different ways. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the right-hand side of the screen are just some different ways that you can search. We'll talk about hiring paths on the next slide, but on the very right-hand side, you can see that you can search things like full-time employment versus part-time employment. You can search for a permanent position, or you can search for internship, etc. So there's no shortage of filters that you can apply for the type of jobs that you're searching for. And this will really just help you kind of narrow down your search. So if you know that you are a computer science student searching for a temporary internship program, you can put all of that in USA Jobs and see all of those opportunities at your fingertips. You can also search USA Jobs by hiring paths. So these are just some examples of hiring paths that you can search by. So we mentioned on the last slide, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps gives you special hiring eligibility when you return from those opportunities. The rest of these hiring paths are somewhat similar. So you can search jobs that are just generally open to the public, fully competitive, but you can also search more specific hiring authorities. So if you are a veteran, for example, you can search jobs that are open to veterans, and that will give you hiring preference for being a veteran. Same with individuals with a disability and other special hiring authorities. You can also search for internship positions and recent graduate positions using the hiring path students and recent grads. And this is just as simple as clicking that button on USA Jobs. So we really encourage you to kind of just play around with USA Jobs, try doing some of these different search functions to see what comes up. Some other things that you'll just kind of need to know when navigating USA Jobs is the GS scale. This is a little bit awkward to put into this presentation right now, but we really think it's helpful to know what this is when you're searching on USA Jobs. Really important to understand what this means. So the GS scale determines what level federal employees will be paid, and also determines the level of work that they'll do. So the scale goes all the way up to GS 15, but we've just included on this slide ones that we think students and recent graduates will be coming into. So for example, if you come in as a GS 5, that means you have roughly received 4 years above high school or completed a bachelor's degree. If you completed a bachelor's degree with a higher GPA, so a GPA of 3.0 or higher, or you're a member of an honor society, or you're in the upper 1/3 of your class, then you can come in at a GS 7 instead of a GS 5. And then the list goes on from there. So if you have a master's degree, you'll come in at a GS 9, a doctoral degree, you'll come in at a GS 11, etc. This is just based off education alone. So you can also qualify for these levels based off work experience. So if you graduate with a bachelor's degree and then go on and gain 5 years of work experience, you won't be coming in at a GS 5 most likely. as long as that work experience was in a relevant field. This is just to show you if you're coming straight out of school where you might be placed. The GS scale is also important. So when you're searching on USA Jobs, you can see one, you can use the GS level to know if you qualify for a job. So if it's a GS 11 and you're coming straight out of undergrad, you might not qualify for that position. So that's a really important reason to know the GS scale. It's also important to know because it also determines the pay. It's also influenced by locality. So you can see a GS5 in Atlanta makes a little bit less than a GS5 in Washington, D.C. That's because the cost of living in Washington, D.C. is a little bit higher. But this is all public information. So you can go online and see, okay, I am coming out of undergrad with a 3.0 or higher, so I might qualify for a GS7 and I really want to live in New York. You can see the salary that you would expect to be making. This is just step one. So there's 10 steps within each GS level that you can receive a little bit of higher pay. So it's not like you'll go from a GS7 making 49,000 to a GS9 making 61,000. There's steps in between, but this will give you a good idea of where you'll be starting out. So once you have found the right job on USA Jobs, then you'll want to make sure you really thoroughly read the job announcement before applying. So each job has a job announcement that looks similar to this, that has a lot of important information on it. It shows you the opening and closing dates. It shows you the pay scale and grade, the GS levels that we just talked about. It tells you the salary, it tells you the schedule, location, and really just tells you exactly how you should apply for the job. We recommend reading these really thoroughly. They can be a little bit confusing at first, but they'll tell you exactly what you need to know for your job, including requirements that you'll need to have for the job, and then also required documents that you'll need to submit when you apply. So this is just more screenshots of what the job announcement looks like. So for example, this job requires a certain degree, and then you can also qualify based on work experience. So it tells you how you can qualify with just your education alone. It tells you how you can qualify with a combination of your education and work experience, or how you can qualify with work experience alone. This is just laying out exactly what type of experience you need to have to apply for this job. It'll also tell you how you will be evaluated, which we definitely recommend reading through as well. It will just tell you all the steps in the process in order to receive this job. In addition to reading the job announcement and submitting all the required documents, you'll also need to submit a federal resume. And so federal resumes can be a bit tricky for students. We won't go too in depth, but we definitely recommend asking the panel if you have more questions about the federal resume. Really the big things to note is that the federal resume, where a private sector resume, you're told to keep it to about 1 page. A federal resume for an entry-level position could be at minimum 2 pages, at most like 5 pages. So they're a bit lengthier because you'll really want to elaborate on the experience that you've had. We like to use a really silly example. If a federal job announcement tells you that you need a charcoal cardigan to apply for a position, don't say, I have a gray sweater. You'll want to go on your federal resume and you want to write, I have a charcoal cardigan. I received this charcoal cardigan in X year, have had it for X years, etc. Really tailor your federal resume to the job announcement because your federal resume will be a really important piece of your application where they will make sure that you have all the requisite experience needed for that job. You'll want to go really in depth here about the skills that you've gained and the impact that you made in all your positions, a little bit more than you would on a private sector resume. USA Jobs has a federal resume builder, so you can build your federal resume directly on USA Jobs, and it will prompt you to enter all of these things, all of your work experience. It'll prompt you to enter the years and the dates and the skills gained, etc. So highly recommend using the federal resume builder on USA Jobs if the federal resume is a little bit daunting to you. So once you have applied, you can use USA Jobs to track your application. The agency will notify you when your application is received, if you meet basic qualifications, when your application is referred to the selecting official, if you're offered the position, etc. And our panelists will go a little bit more in depth into this hiring process. So again, highly recommend you ask them any questions you have about what happens after your application is submitted. I know that's a common question for students. USA Jobs can seem, we've heard it described as a little bit of a black hole for applications where you apply and don't hear back. but there is a lot happening behind the scenes once you apply. You can also feel free to follow up on an application if you have questions. Just remember that agencies receive a high volume of applications, so be patient as you move through the process. But if you don't hear back in a timely manner, there is a number for a hiring official on most job announcements. You can reach out to that number or that email address to inquire about your application. And then the final thing that I'll mention is after you apply, you might have to go through a security clearance or background check process. And this process is really just to ensure that you are trustworthy and will be a good employee for the organization. So most jobs will just require a background check. If there is additional information needed or it's higher level of security, you'll need a full security clearance. Again, these forms are online. So the SF-85 and SF-86 forms are forms that you will actually have to fill out to complete the security clearance or background check process, and they live on OPM's website. So if you're ever curious about what you might need to submit a security clearance, you can look online. It's also, we also recommend just looking at these forms if you know that you're interested in a federal job, so that you can start gathering relevant information now. So for example, the form might ask you to list all the times that you've traveled outside the country in the past 5 years. If you know that that's coming on the form in advance, you can start tracking your travel as you're doing it rather than when you're applying to the job or when you need to fill out the form. Other tips for the security clearance process is just curb any bad habits now. Anything that you wouldn't want to put on a security clearance form, you can stop that bad habit. Usually it will ask in X amount of years have you, not have you ever. Also recommend staying out of debt or diligently repaying it. Student loan debt is not a problem as long as you're diligently repaying it. We like to mention that because a lot of students get worried about student loans. As long as you're completing all of your payments on time, that's not an issue. This more so refers to any debt that you're not repaying. And then finally, be completely honest on the forms. It is definitely more advantageous for you to have a minor transgression and be honest about it than for whoever is conducting the security clearance process to find out that you lied. That is disqualifying if you lie on those forms. So just be completely honest. This process is not meant to scare you. It's just kind of an obligatory process of working for the federal government. So I know I went through all of that very, very quickly, but we're lucky to be joined by a panel of experts in federal hiring. And so I really want to give them an opportunity to speak with you all and offer their expertise and expand on some of the things that we mentioned in this presentation today. So I will pass it over to Brittany, who will introduce our panelists and be the moderator for our panel today.
Thanks, Leah. And hello, everyone. Again, my name is Brittany Moore. I'll be serving as the moderator for today's panel and want to first introduce them. So we'll have Deborah Eichhorn, who is the Recruiting Program Manager, the Human Capital Office of the U.S. Government Accountability Office. We also have Kelly Sewell, who is the Human Capital Communications Specialist at the Department of Interior. And we're also joined by Keisha Monroe, who is the Pathways Program Officer and Student Programs Manager of Strategic Recruitment, Diversity, and Inclusion, Office of the Chief Human Capital Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. So thank you all for joining us. Just to let you all know, I will be asking a question for all of the panelists to start us off, and then following that with a few specific questions for each of the panelists to get a little bit more detail about their background or agency. And then following that, we'll turn to some of the questions that the students have submitted in their pre-survey. So the first question for the panelists, can you please tell us a bit more about yourself and your career path? More specifically, how did you get into federal government and the position that you're in now? And it would help if you have a liberal arts background, if you could speak a little bit more about how your skills translate into the federal government position you're in. You could start with Deborah.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. My background started a little bit more on the traditional route. I've studied public policy in undergraduate and graduate school. Particularly, I was interested in environmental policy. I did participate in the presidential management. It was called the intern program then. So the PMF that was Leah mentioned before, which I'd highly recommend. You apply and get that on your calendar. It's really a wonderful program and a great way to come into the federal service. But I ended up getting a job at GAO out of graduate school. And after several years of working on environmental policy related topics, I realized that why I really cared about those issues and I was passionate about those issues, what I really liked was doing kind of more internal management improvement activities, because I volunteered for some activities at GAO, and I found that I felt more like energized and passionate about looking across my organization rather than GAO's mission, which looks at other organizations and how they can do things more effectively. So I kind of shifted gears and actually left GAO for a number of years and went in a few different agencies, and eventually came back to GAO. I've been back now about 20 years and has still been able to follow sort of my passion and interests, and spent 15 years doing internal communications at GAO, and then the last 3 years working on in managing the recruitment program. So one of the things I just wanted to comment about the career path is that there wasn't, in this side, I think we had mentioned about the mission side of an organization and the operation side of the organization. So I started on the mission and then moved to the operations, and that's where I really enjoyed being. But in my positions, there wasn't real specific career path, but it worked out fine for me, because what I found, and I've seen this with my colleagues, if you're really enjoying what you're doing in the federal government and you just are passionate about it and work hard at it, even if there's no path that's evident in front of you, opportunities arise, either to do a detail or a promotion, or maybe even to move to another organization. So I wouldn't put as much emphasis on, I have to see how I'm going to get from A to Z. Is just doing things one step at a time and finding out what you enjoy doing at work, what energizes you, and then choosing that path or altering that path depending on what you find out. So with that, anyway, good to be here. Look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Deborah. I'll turn it over to Keisha for the same question.
Hi, so for me, started when I was in high school, actually. I was a student at Anacostia Senior High School here in DC, and I was in the Law, Justice, and Security program in high school. And with that program, each year during the summer months, they helped us, or pretty much placed us in different positions within the federal government. So my first federal government position was at then called the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm. They're now under the Department of Justice. That was that summer. I spent the summer at the Bureau of Prisons, and then the summer at the Internal Revenue Service. And from my summer at the Internal Revenue Service, I graduated from high school and went on to college, and they kept me on as a student while I was in college. And I worked while I was in school, and I graduated, and I got a permanent job in human resources, and I've been in human resources ever since. My undergrad is in business administration. I have 23 years in the federal government now. So I pretty much started as a student, and now I oversee and manage student and recent graduate programs in the Department of Homeland Security.
Wonderful, thank you. Kelly, would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I guess my public service career started where I grew up in Southern California. I'm here in the DC area now, but I grew up since middle school, high school, volunteering or working for local government or local nonprofits, and I knew I wanted to give back to my community in some way. So it started off at the local level. I also worked for my Congress member for a little bit back home. And so, I kind of had a mix of interest and experience in different public service areas. But I knew as I was going through college, I went to Cal State Fullerton and got my degree in public administration. And, that was kind of a good mix of the business aspects of it, as well as the political science arena. And so I was lucky that my university had that public administration program. But, at the time, I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up after I graduated. So during college, I accepted an internship in DC with the Department of the Interior in one of our bureaus, the Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation, and Enforcement. And as a Southern California, I didn't know anything about coal mining or, Appalachia or working in those areas, but I knew that I wanted to explore this career path on the federal side, because I had experience at the local level. And so I had a great supervisor who convinced me to come out to DC and give this bureau a shot, even though it wasn't on my radar at all. And so I'm glad that I listened to him. And so I did the internship that summer and went back to complete my degree at Cal State Fullerton. And prior to graduating, I reached back out to my supervisor and asked him, hey, do you have a job for me in DC? I really enjoyed my internship and I'd love to come back out for a longer term. And so he had a fellowship opportunity through AmeriCorps. So I know Leia mentioned AmeriCorps. I can't recommend that program high enough. And it was a one-year fellowship that turned into 2 years. And after the 2 years, I was looking for a permanent position, and they were able to convert me into a permanent position with that same office, to where I was responsible for managing the volunteer and youth programs for that bureau. And then over a few years of managing that program, there was an opportunity in the Department of the Interior's Office of Human Capital, where I sit now, for a human capital communications analyst position, which is not my background. Communications is something that I know how to do, but it wasn't something that I was necessarily trained in, through my degree. And so, even though it was a little, the title might not have been something that would have caught my eye, when I looked at the position description, it was something that I was very interested in. And my supervisor at the time was able to bring me on board to that position. And it was brand new. Nobody had been in that position before. So I had a lot of flexibility in creating that position and my own projects, because there was no precedence for it. So, my advice to you is to take those risks. Don't turn down any opportunities that might seem out of your wheelhouse, or, if it's hard to explain to your family, sometimes it's a good thing. And, the more complicated it is, the more rewarding I found my positions to be. So, take those risks, and looking forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This next question is going to be for Keisha. So Leah provided a broad overview of the Pathways program. Can you tell us a bit more about the student and entry-level programs at DHS? And knowing that you have some experience from HHS, can you touch on those programs as well?
Sure. So here at DHS, we utilize all three of the Pathways programs, the internship, the recent graduates, and the presidential management fellows. With internships, there are different components within DHS who utilize Pathways internships to fill certain types of hiring needs. So for instance, there is an organization within headquarters. They are, it's called the Acquisition Fellows Program. And those individuals that office uses Pathways internships and even the recent graduate programs to hire individuals who are interested in working as contract specialists, IT specialists, and engineers. And once those individuals are actually brought on board, while they're hired within headquarters, they're actually rotating and working within the components. So someone could apply to this job that's posted from headquarters could actually be working in U.S. Coast Guard for their 1 year or 2 year time frame. And then if they're eligible for conversion, then they're converted to be a Coast Guard permanent employee. So there are a number of programs like that. Currently, we just finished hiring for our newly established Secretary's Honors Program for Cyber. And with that program, we utilize this Pathways Recent Graduates Program. And again, that's for individuals who have completed their degree within 2 years of the vacancy announcement that was posted. So those individuals, once they come on board, they will be a part of a 1 year program. And usually with these more formal programs, the individuals come on board, they come on board in a cohort. So they're going through the entire 1 year together. They have training that has already been scheduled for them. So once they come on board, they have a training plan, they'll get mentors. They work on their individual development plan, also known as an IDP. With some of the organizations who have formal programs, they do tours or different type of networking events or conferences for those individuals as well. Presidential Management Fellows. We used to hire a lot of Presidential Management Fellows back in some years ago. However, now we're trying to get that those hires back up within the department. Last year for fiscal year 2020, we actually met almost at 100% our hiring goals for pathways. We got to about, I have to double check, but I believe we may have gotten to 300 hires across all 3 programs. And that's how we run it here at DHS. Each year we go out, we ask our hiring managers across the department, do you plan on filling positions in pathways? How many? And we track those goals, the hires versus those goals each year. But again, we utilize those programs a lot. We actually utilize programs such as Scholarship for Service for those who are in college majoring in some type of cyber or information technology. We utilize that hiring authority a lot. Those who are majoring or have experience in cybersecurity, we use the Cybersecurity Direct Hire Authority. That's different from Pathways programs. That's individuals who are eligible at the GS9 or higher. So if you have experience or if you have a graduate degree in cybersecurity, then you may be eligible to apply through that portion as well. We use different programs like the Born Scholars. Those are individuals who receive scholarships from the Department of Defense, and they apply for jobs within DHS as well. My experience, so I've spent 5 years at DHS managing Pathways program, and then I went to HHS between 2 different agencies, and I managed their programs as well. And they're pretty much running the same. A lot of agencies do a lot of the same things with Pathways. They just have more formal programs that have a different type of training and development program. A lot of agencies, especially the 2 that I've been in, utilize a lot of different positions when they're hiring Pathways positions. So when I was at HHS, was Health and Human Services, the Office of the Inspector General Office, a lot of their positions that they use for Pathways, whether it was recent graduates or internships, were accounting positions. So they hire a lot of accountant or auditors in that field using the Pathways programs. They did a lot of operations research analyst positions as well. Here at DHS, we use them for pretty much, if not all, most of our series. We use recent graduates to fill positions in TSA with the agents that are in the airport. We use them for Secret Service, for the Secret Service agents. We use the Pathways of Hiring Authority for recent graduates. We use it at USCIS for the asylum officers as well. So pretty much we mirror the Pathways positions to those permanent positions, so that will give people that pathway into the federal government and DHS and ongoing once they are eligible for conversion.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick time check. It looks like we have about 12 more minutes for this panel, so I'll continue with the questions. The next is for Deborah. Deborah, GAO is known for having a very strong internship and entry-level development program. Can you tell us a little bit about these programs and what you're looking for in the ideal candidate?
Sure. So we have an entry-level program, which we call our professional development program, and that's a 2-year program for folks once they're finished, either they finish their degrees or just in the work world. And that's similar to the other recent graduate programs. It provides a lot of hands-on training and opportunities, including your ability to rotate between 3 different teams working on different policy areas across the government. We have advisors attached to you, and you get pay increases on a regular basis. That announcement comes out. We used to do it a lot. We just had one, and it could be a year or 2 more before we put out our next entry-level announcement. So our main bread and butter, which helps you get into that program another way, is through our internship program. And that we offer 3 seasons of the year. So we offer it in the fall, spring, and the summer. The largest cohort is in the summer. And and you have to be a current student to do that, or an enrolled student, even if you will graduate once the internship ends, but you have to be always enrolled as a student to qualify. And for those internships, we really use that as a way for you to test us out, for us to check you out, and for you to be exposed to as much of GAO as you can. And at the end, if it's successful, we do have the opportunity to convert you to a permanent position if we have those positions available, similar to what Keisha just said. One of the things I just wanted to share is what we're looking for applicants in those positions. And I think you'll hear that these are the kinds of skill sets you can get from any discipline, any major. A big part is just analytical skills, how to do research, how to develop recommendations, how to analyze and present data. The other areas, strong communications, written and oral communication skills. Again, any major, any discipline, that would be an important skill set to have. Teamwork is really important at GAO. None of our work is done individually by one person going off. When you're on doing our main bread and butter mission work, you're on a small audit engagement team, and being able to work as a team, comfort with a team, taking leadership roles within that team, all of those are really important skill sets. And the other thing I just want to highlight that's really valuable at GAO as part of our organizational culture is just a curiosity, coming in and wanting to just ask questions about our work, the engagement we're working on, and GAO as a whole. But we're always learning. One engagement may last 6 months to a year, so then you'll be coming up to speed on another topic. So being interested, intellectually curious is a great asset and attribute to come. To make it part of your application to work at GAO.
Thank you. Kelly, a similar question for you. What skills are the Department of Interior looking for, and how can students make their application stand out?
Sure. So at the department, we have a workforce of nearly 70,000 employees, and we work in over 2,400 operating locations across the U.S. and in U.S. territories. We also have over 350 occupations represented across our workforce. So we're looking for folks from all different backgrounds and skills, and a very diverse workforce. But I'll echo a lot of what Deborah was saying about the skills. Folks with critical thinking skills, problem solving, a willingness to learn. That's really important for us. A lot of your technical expertise will come on the job as you build up your experience, and through your volunteer work or unique projects that you support. But, especially as liberal arts majors, these skills like critical thinking, communication, leadership, those are, like Deborah said, transferable across different disciplines and occupations. So, hone in on those types of skills, and, depending on where you end up in your career, if it's more technical or a management or administrative type of position, that can get you really far. So, I would say don't pigeonhole yourself into one particular field, because you never know what's out there. And, those skills you bring as a liberal arts major can really benefit you in a variety of disciplines.
Great. That's actually a great segue into our next question, which is more so giving advice on those interested, those who have the interdisciplinary, paths into government. So for example, a science major who might be interested in exploring public policy, or maybe somebody with the humanities or social science background who's interested in social impact work of technology. How would you recommend those folks enter into those types of pathways that are not necessarily the same as their educational background?
This is Deborah. One of the recommendations I would have is to do a lot of searching for fun through USA Jobs, and to see what jobs are out there that just catch your eye, even if you're not qualified for them now, and look through how they describe the roles and responsibilities and the qualifications for those jobs. So that would give you a really quick idea of the technical, either with your technical skills, how that merge, or your other social science skills, how they merge. And you could really quickly see, after looking through a number of them at different agencies, what kind of roles and responsibilities and qualifications that they're looking for. And that would be a good place to start.
Just to follow up on what Deborah said, that's definitely a great idea. And with USA Jobs, you can actually do a filter. So you can filter and have whatever positions you're interested in. That information can be emailed to you once those positions become available. And as Deborah stated, just be very cautious in reading the vacancy announcement, and you should probably, well, not probably, you should read the entire vacancy announcement, because as she stated, it's going to tell you what's the requirement for that position. So let's say you have a degree in a certain field, but you have experience in something else. A lot of positions don't have positive education requirements. So you may be able to qualify by just having a degree, even if it's not in that particular skill area, but you have that experience.
Yeah, I would add more and more folks in the public and private sectors are looking for more well-rounded candidates, people who have a little bit of expertise in multiple areas. You can bring in different disciplines and experiences and perspectives. So there's a lot of positions that might cross over, between, areas that are more technical or require a higher level of education, but others, that's not always the case. So you can move between occupation series, easily because of the experience that you'll be developing over time.
I want to add something really quickly that builds on something Leah and Keisha said, and that is the reading of that job announcement, which is, can be kind of intimidating and look written very bureaucratically. But sort of the secrets or all the information is there, even information about what to put on your resume or how to secret sauce, I guess the word I was looking for, the what to put on your resume, what skills to emphasize. It's all in there, and just it's painful sometimes to read. So you can read it through a few times. You'll read different things, but just read it through, each section, and it will help you in so many ways about what that organization is looking for. And then what words, I think the sweater example Leah gave, it'll be laid out in there too, the specific skill set. And if it says, that gray sweater or says Excel, experience, just to reflect that in your resume. No need to be creative, there. Just, it really lays out all the details that you should need to emphasize. And it's right there in front of you. So just want to encourage you to read it really, really carefully.
Great, thank you so much. Just one final question, and then also want to leave it open to the panelists to provide any closing remarks to the students. Can you share any guidance on networking in the federal government? How can students find a mentor or make connections to help them in their careers?
Is this referring to current government employees or students or interns, or just in general, someone who's interested in working?
In general, or both?
Definitely if you are, so within DHS, we actually have a formal mentoring program, and all DHS employees are eligible for that program, and that goes out, I believe, twice a year. So individuals who are currently within DHS, they are eligible to be a part of that mentoring program. If you are in Pathways, that requirement of Pathways is for you to have a mentor. So you can either join, we have a Pathways mentoring system as well that we utilize. So they can use either one of those systems, or their manager usually has a mentor set up for them when they get there. If you're someone, let's say you're interested in Homeland Security and you don't know where to start or things like that, when people visit your college or university, or if you go somewhere and you meet someone and you have a great conversation with that person, a great networking conversation, then that person may be someone who can either help you find a mentor or may even offer to be your mentor themselves. Just taking up any opportunity that you have to introduce yourself to someone who works in the federal government. I know for me, we do webinars here at DHS, and we call them DHS is hiring webinars. And I did a session on our last webinars for veterans. And one individual reached out to me on LinkedIn just by having my name and what I spoke about in that webinar. And the other person actually found me and sent me a Facebook message based on the presentation that we put on during that session as well. And then once you make those contacts and people tell you who was a better contact for whatever area you're looking for, you can kind of use that way to network as well.
I would also just add to what Keisha said, the same thing, using contacts that you have, join professional organizations. A lot of them have student sections or recent grad sections to way to network. There's also professional organizations associated with different affinity groups. There could be women in engineering. There could be African-American chemists. I mean, those kinds of groups too will help maybe establish opportunities for mentoring. And like Keisha said, connections with alumni, like if you can speak to your career centers or alumni, they might be able to find alumni who work in those organizations. And I know managers at JO love, being able to talk to students and support students and encourage them, in the federal service. So you'll find if you can just find the people in the organizations, I think like Keisha said, getting a LinkedIn email, people are really willing. I mean, we're proud to be working for the federal government, and we would love to have support the next generation of students coming in. So just finding someone you could just reach out to, and if they can't help you, they probably will point you in the direction of someone else can. So don't be shy about doing that. I think you'll find a very welcoming and willing recipients, at the different agencies you reach out to.
Yeah, and I dropped a link to a few of the government affinity groups that DOI works with. And, a lot of these organizations host conferences every year. Many of them are free or at lower cost to students. So, get on their email list because they often share job opportunities, upcoming events, and webinars. So these are really great groups to become part of their network. And, you just don't know who might be out there and who you can connect with. If there's an opportunity to volunteer with them, that's another great way to get your foot in the door and build that relationship with the folks who are encouraging recruitment and outreach of individuals from all backgrounds. So even though you might not identify as an Asian American, or you don't think you are part of the Blacks in Government organization, still sign up for their list. Their conferences are usually open to anyone, whether you identify as that group or if you're an ally. So, those groups are usually open to anyone, and they offer a lot of great resources and training and networking.
Thank you so much, Kelly, Keisha, and Deborah. We really appreciate your time today. It looks like we're out of time for questions, but really appreciate PBK for having us again this year. Leia has also dropped a few links in the chat, so please feel free to check out those websites for additional resources. And yes, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much, Brittany, Leia, and our wonderful panelists. That was a great session. So I know we have our next session at 2:15. If you did have questions that you would like to be answered, you can always send them my and Anne's way, and we will find a way to connect you either to Brittany and Leia or to someone who can help you get more resources and information in that area. So thank you again so much, and we will see everyone at 2:15.